Mortal Kombat didn't just have Easter eggs, it basically invented them. From hidden characters that took decades to fully understand, to glitches that accidentally created entire fighters, today, I'm breaking down every single Easter egg in the franchise, starting with the one you've definitely seen but never understood. Here's the thing about the most iconic moment in Mortal Kombat history. It requires almost zero skill. You just land an uppercut, that's it. During Mortal Kombat 2 matches, if you connected an uppercut, there was roughly a 1 in 100 chance that sound designer Dan Forden's digitized face would pop into the bottom right corner of the screen and shout "Toasty" in this weirdly enthusiastic voice. No warning, no build-up, just a man appearing out of nowhere like he owned the place. And players lost their minds trying to figure out the exact trigger. Perfect rounds, flawless blocks, specific combo strings performed in exact sequence. The reality was way less glamorous. You threw an uppercut and a random number generator decided whether Dan Forden's face would bless your screen, which is, not exactly the ancient mystery everyone made it out to be, but that rarity is exactly what made it feel special. You couldn't reliably force it. You just land a clean uppercut and suddenly there's a man screaming at you from the corner of your screen. Your brain convinced you it meant something deeper. The whole thing was literally just a sound designer signing his own work, the gaming equivalent of a graffiti artist tagging a wall. And it became so iconic that Mortal Kombat has included Toasty references in nearly every major release since. Decades of a man popping up uninvited after uppercuts. You have to respect that kind of commitment. But if you think a random screaming head is unsettling, wait until you see what's hiding in the trees. The living forest's faces. Most Easter eggs hide. They tuck themselves behind obscure button combinations or impossible victory conditions, waiting for someone dedicated enough to dig them out. The Living Forest didn't hide anything, it just stared at you. In Mortal Kombat 2, the Living Forest stage featured grotesque animated faces embedded directly into the tree bark. Not subtle ones either. These were full, contorted human faces frozen in expressions of suffering, rage, and pure anguish, shifting and moving as if they were watching your fight unfold in real time. And the trees weren't background decoration. They were an audience, and they did not look happy to be there. Here's the thing. Unlike almost every other entry on this list, there was no trigger, no secret input, no flawless victory requirement. The faces were just always there, impossible to miss after a couple of matches on the stage. And yet, players spent an absurd amount of time trying to interact with them. Could you damage the faces? Could you destroy them? Could you knock your opponent into one and trigger a secret fatality? The answer to all of those questions was no. The faces did absolutely nothing, and that was entirely the point. Midway didn't design the Living Forest faces as a mechanic. They designed them as a feeling. The stage wasn't a backdrop. It was a character, one that existed purely to make you uncomfortable while you played. Zero gameplay function, just vibes. Horrible, horrible vibes. The team treated every arena like it had its own personality, and the Living Forest's personality was screaming in eternal torment, which is, not ideal for a relaxing evening of video games. But if you think a few screaming trees are unsettling, wait until you hear what Midway hid inside the game's debug menus. The crypt's jump scares. Every fighting game has an unlock menu. You beat arcade mode, you earn some coins, you spend them on concept art and alternate costumes. It's the most boring part of any game. Midway Games looked at that and said, what if we made it terrifying? Starting in Mortal Kombat, Deadly Alliance, the crypt replaced the standard unlock menu with a full cemetery environment. Rows of coffins, tombs, and headstones stretching out in every direction, each one containing a piece of hidden content, concept art, alternate costumes, behind-the-scenes videos, all the usual stuff. Except to get any of it, you had to physically walk up to each grave and open it. And by the time later entries like Mortal Kombat X and 11 rolled around, some of those graves had jump scares waiting for you. Here's the thing, the scares were randomized. You never knew which coffin would just hand you a nice sketch of Scorpion and which one would launch something horrible directly at your face. Every single interaction became a gamble. You'd hover over a tomb, take a breath, and click, knowing full well the game might punish you for wanting to unlock a new arena, a content menu, actively trying to scare you. I don't know what to tell you, but players leaned into it. Communities started mapping out which coffins contained which unlocks, trying to find optimal paths through the graveyard so they could grab the best content first. People were treating a menu like haunted real estate, analyzing grave positions like they were solving a puzzle, and some of these crypts had hundreds of coffins to crack open. The whole thing proved something nobody expected. Even the most utilitarian part of a game can become a genuine experience if someone bothers to make it one. Every other fighting game gives you a spreadsheet. Mortal Kombat gave you a cemetery that fights back. But if you think hiding secrets in a graveyard is clever, wait until you hear about the character whose entire name is a secret. This might be the most elegant Easter egg in the entire franchise. Millions of players said this name out loud for years without ever realizing what it meant. Noob Saibot. Say it again. Now spell it backward. Tobias. Boon.Ed Boon and John Tobias, the two creators of Mortal Kombat, literally hid their own names inside a secret character. They spelled their surnames backward, smashed them together, and turned themselves into a hidden boss in Mortal Kombat 2. That's not a developer signature on a credit screen. That's two guys inserting themselves directly into their own game as a fighter you can actually lose to. And the character's design made it even better. Noob Saibot wasn't some elaborately designed warrior with a backstory and unique armor. He was an all-black, featureless ninja, barely a character at all. More like a developer ghost haunting their own creation, which is essentially what he was. An interactive autograph hidden in plain sight. Here's the thing. Widespread awareness of this took years. Players who subscribed to gaming magazines and followed industry coverage caught it relatively early. But the average kid pumping quarters into an arcade cabinet had zero reason to know the last names of the guys who made the game. You'd fight Noob Saibot, lose to Noob Saibot, tell your friends about Noob Saibot, and never once think to reverse the letters. It wasn't until early internet forums started connecting the dots that the secret finally spread to the broader community. Two developers wrote their names backward, turned it into a secret boss, dressed him in all black so he barely looked like a real character, and then just waited for someone to figure it out. That's not an Easter egg. That's a power move, but if you think hiding developer names is clever, wait until you see what was hiding in the background of stages this whole time. Blaze and Hornbuckle. Blaze is one of those characters where the Easter egg is straightforward, but the lore around it has gotten genuinely muddy over time. He showed up in Mortal Kombat 2 as a burning figure fighting on a bridge in the background of the Pit 2 stage. Just a little flaming dude going at it in the distance while you're trying to win your actual match. Most players noticed him eventually, thought, that's weird, and moved on with their lives. But here's where it gets complicated. There was supposedly another figure on that same bridge, a green palette swap that the community started calling Hornbuckle. And I say supposedly because this is the one Easter egg on this entire list where even the dedicated Mortal Kombat archivists aren't fully sure what the complete story is anymore. Early internet forums and 90s gaming magazines referenced Hornbuckle as either a developer inside joke, a fan-coined name that got retroactively treated as official, or some combination of both. The problem is that those sources have largely degraded. Forum posts are gone. Magazine scans are incomplete. What was once a known reference has slowly turned into a partial mystery, which is honestly kind of fascinating. What we do know for certain is what happened to Blaze. That tiny burning background character eventually graduated from set dressing to an actual playable fighter with real moves and real lore significance. By Mortal Kombat Armageddon, Blaze was literally the final boss. The entire plot of that game revolved around him. He went from random fire guy on a bridge to the most important character in the storyline, which is peak Netherrealm behavior. Find something cool in the margins, promote it to the center, and act like that was always the plan. Hornbuckle, meanwhile, remains lost to internet decay. I don't know what to tell you, but if you think a background character becoming the final boss is a weird career trajectory, wait until you hear about the motion capture dummy that became a fan favorite. Mocap. Most secret characters in fighting games reward you with something cool. A hidden ninja, a demon, a god. Mortal Kombat. Deadly Alliance rewarded you with a guy covered in ping pong balls. Mocap is exactly what he looks like. He's a motion capture actor, complete with the wireframe skeleton and tracking markers that animators use to record human movement for digital characters. That's it. That's the secret. You grind through the game's toughest challenges, you unlock the final hidden fighter, and it's literally a tech demo wearing pants. Congratulations on your incredible skill and dedication. Here's the production process. And honestly, it might be the most honest Easter egg Midway ever made. Every other secret character hides behind mystery and lore. Mocap just pulls back the curtain and shows you the machinery. Here's how we actually made these characters move. Here's the skeleton underneath Sub-Zero's roundhouse kick. Here's what Scorpion looked like before we gave him a face. You're not fighting a warrior, you're fighting the concept of animation itself. But here's the thing. Instead of treating mocap as a one-off joke and moving on, Midway kept bringing him back. He appeared in Deception and then Armageddon with a gradually more complete visual presentation each time, evolving from pure wireframe novelty into something approaching an actual character. The developers clearly looked at the reception and thought, yeah, people like fighting as our workflow, which is, not a conclusion most studios would reach. The whole concept is pure meta-commentary. Midway didn't hide a cool new fighter behind their hardest content. They hid the literal reason cool fighters exist in the first place. Every fluid animation, every realistic punch and kick in the game started as some person in a studio covered in reflective dots doing karate in front of cameras. Mocap is that person. He's the truth behind the fantasy, and they dared you to pick him in versus mode. But if you think a walking tech demo is a strange reward for dedicated players, wait until you meet the character that's just a man with no skin. Meet. Every fighting game has secret characters designed to make you feel like a genius for finding them. Mortal Kombat 4 had one designed to make you feel like you needed therapy. Meat was accessible through the arcade ladder under specific victory conditions, and the reward for your effort was, well, a skinless human being. No costume, no color scheme, no visual motif, just raw exposed musculature staring back at you like a page ripped out of a medical textbook and dropped into a fighting game. Cool, thanks for that. Here's the thing about Meat that makes him so uniquely unsettling. Every other secret character in the franchise gave you something aspirational. A mysterious ninja, a shadowy doppelganger, a fire elemental. You unlocked them and thought, this is awesome. You unlocked Meat and thought, I would like to undo this, please. The character had zero identifying features beyond the anatomical horror of their own existence. No face, no expression, just tendons and muscle fibers rendered with a level of detail that absolutely nobody asked for. And the simplicity was the entire point. Midway didn't give Meat a backstory, or a rivalry, or a cool signature move that justified the visual nightmare. The horror was the distinction. While other developers were designing secret characters with elaborate lore and flashy aesthetics, Midway essentially said, what if we just showed you what's underneath a person and called it a day? Community reception split right down generational lines. Older players found Meat genuinely disturbing and questioned why any developer would willingly put this in a game children could access. Younger players, the ones raised on the franchise's escalating grotesqueness, appreciated the sheer audacity of subverting every fighting game character convention simultaneously. Meat proved that Midway valued memorable impact over conventional design. You might forget a dozen cool-looking ninja palette swaps, but you will never ever forget the walking anatomy lesson. But if Meat is the strangest reward for finding a secret, the original Mortal Kombat had one that was nearly impossible to find in the first place. Reptile's Hidden Battle. This is the one that started everything. Before the internet existed in any meaningful way. Before GameFAQs. Before YouTube walkthroughs. Before you could just Google how to unlock secret character, there was a rumor spreading through arcades across the country about a green ninja that nobody could find on the character select screen. In 1992, the original Mortal Kombat had a secret that most players never saw with their own eyes. If you were fighting on the pit stage, a shadow silhouette had to fly across the moon in the background during that round. You had to win a flawless victory, and did it all without blocking a single time. The game would pull you into a hidden fight against a character called Reptile, a green, palette-swapped ninja who wasn't listed anywhere. No menu, no hints, No indication whatsoever that he existed. Here's what made this legendary. The conditions were so brutally specific that you couldn't stumble into it. You needed the right stage. You needed to win without taking a single hit, and you needed to do it without ever touching the block button. That's not a casual discovery. That's a test of mastery disguised as a secret. So what happened is exactly what you'd expect. Kids told other kids at school. Someone's older brother supposedly did it once. A guy at the arcade swore he saw it happen on a Tuesday. The rumor spread like wildfire, but almost nobody could verify it because verification required you to be genuinely excellent at the game. Some people convinced themselves it was cabinet specific. Others thought it was region locked. None of that was true. You just had to be good enough, which is a sentence that eliminated roughly 95% of the player base, and that was entirely by design. The team at Midway built Reptile's Encounter as a reward for players who combined exceptional skill with deep game knowledge. You couldn't brute force your way to him. You earned it or you didn't. That philosophy of secrets as earned rewards became the franchise's entire approach to hidden content going forward. Every secret character, every hidden fight, every unlockable mystery traces its DNA back to one green ninja on a bridge that most people only ever heard about. But if Reptile was the franchise's first hidden ninja, he certainly wasn't the last. And the next one was even harder to find. Smoke in the Portal. Here's the thing about most secret characters in the early 90s. They were palette swaps. You'd fight a green ninja instead of a yellow one, or a blue version of a guy you already knew. Cool, sure, but nobody was losing sleep over it. Smoke was different, not because he wasn't a palette swap, because he absolutely was. Gray ninja, smoke effects, faster movement, built on Scorpion's framework. But Smoke was the first hidden character in Mortal Kombat that actually felt like somebody sat down and said, let's hide a fighter so well that finding him becomes its own legend. In Mortal Kombat 2's arcade version, Smoke existed as a genuine secret character tucked behind one of the most specific unlock conditions in fighting game history. He was a human ninja in gray, blending in with the other color-coded assassins, but carrying enough visual flair to feel like a genuine reward. This wasn't a developer phoning it in. This was a developer hiding a present where almost nobody would ever look, which is either incredibly generous or slightly unhinged. But unlocking him? That's where things got ridiculous. You had to be fighting on the Portal stage. Then Dan Forden's face had to pop up in the corner with his famous toasty sound, and in the tiny window where that happened, you had to press down and start. 3 conditions, one of which was completely random. You couldn't force the toasty to appear. You just had to be ready when it did, like some kind of arcade cabinet wildlife photographer waiting for a rare bird. This created something genuinely unique. Every arcade session on the Portal stage became tense. Players would land an uppercut and immediately stare at the bottom corner of the screen, fingers hovering over start. Miss the window by half a second? Too bad. The randomness meant you could play for hours and never get the chance, or get it on your first match and fumble the input like an idiot. Smoke proved that secret characters could be more than novelty rewards. They could be creative experiments worth the effort of finding. But if you think a character hidden behind a random event and a split-second input was confusing, wait until you hear about the character that didn't even exist in the game at all. This is the cruelest Easter egg on the entire list, and it's not even close. Yane appeared in Mortal Kombat 3 promotional materials as a water-themed purple ninja. Screenshots circulated through gaming magazines. Actual footage existed. He was right there, a brand new palette swap ninja with a cool elemental gimmick, and players across the country walked up to their local arcade cabinets fully expecting to find him. He wasn't there. Rain could not be unlocked, encountered, or accessed in any way in the initial arcade release of Mortal Kombat 3. Every other Easter egg on this list follows the same formula. Hidden content exists inside the game, and players figure out how to find it. Rain inverted that entirely. He was visible content shown outside the game that was never programmed into it. The developers essentially held up a picture of a character, said, "Look at this cool guy," and then made it physically impossible to play as him, which is, not ideal. But players didn't know that. They assumed Rain was just really, really well hidden. So they did what Mortal Kombat players always do. They searched. They tried every button combination on every stage with every character, They shared increasingly elaborate theories about what sequence of inputs would finally reveal this mysterious purple ninja. Forum posts from that era read like conspiracy boards. My friend's cousin unlocked him at an arcade in Texas. Sure he did, buddy. Sure he did. The frustration lasted years. Players genuinely felt betrayed. They'd been shown something cool and told to go find it, except there was nothing to find. It's like someone hiding an empty Easter egg and watching you search for the candy inside. But here's where the story gets its redemption arc. Midway eventually made Rain fully playable in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, complete with water-based special moves, a real moveset, and actual canonical lore. The character that started as a deliberate mirage became a legitimate franchise fighter. Rain was real all along. He just wasn't ready yet. But if you think Rain's journey from myth to reality is wild, wait until you hear about the character who was literally born from a typo in the game's code. Ermac. Ermac is not a character. Not originally. Ermac is a diagnostic label that got so famous the developers had no choice but to make it real. Here's what actually happened. In the original Mortal Kombat, the game's audit menu had a section tracking various statistics. One entry was labeled Ears Ermacs, short for error macros, a standard debug counter keeping tabs on software errors during gameplay. It was back-end diagnostic text, never meant to be seen by anyone outside of an arcade operator running maintenance. Nobody at Midway designed a character called Ermac. It was housekeeping data sitting in a menu that curious players were absolutely not supposed to care about. And that's when things got interesting, because players did find it. And in the early 90s, a mysterious name buried in an arcade cabinet's guts didn't feel like a debug label. It felt like a clue. Players started compiling notes, sharing findings across arcades, building elaborate theories about what inputs, what stages, what character combinations would finally unlock this mysterious hidden fighter named Ermac. Entire communities dedicated hours to cracking a code that didn't exist, because the thing they were chasing was literally just a maintenance counter logging software errors. But here's the kicker. Midway looked at thousands of players collectively insisting a debug label was a secret character. And instead of issuing a correction, they said fine. You want Ermac? Here's Ermac. Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 introduced Ermac as a fully playable fighter. Real moveset, real design, real backstory. And that backstory? A being composed of thousands of souls merged together into a single entity, which is, you know, a perfect metaphor for how Ermac was actually created. Thousands of players fusing their belief into a single collective delusion so powerful it literally willed a character into existence. The developers didn't just ignore the confusion, they canonized it. It's gaming's most successful transformation of a bug into a feature. A maintenance label became a fan obsession, became an official character, became a franchise staple. Ermac didn't come from a design document. Ermac came from an error counter and the sheer stubbornness of people who refused to believe it was an accident. But if you think a community willing a glitch into existence is impressive, wait until you hear about the character that pulled the exact same trick with even less evidence to work with. Scarlet. This one is different from every other entry on this list, because Scarlet wasn't hidden in a game. She was hidden from games for years. Here's what happened. A red-colored female ninja started appearing in early Mortal Kombat promotional materials, screenshots, and arcade footage. Players saw her. Magazines printed her. She was right there, plain as day, standing alongside the rest of the ninja roster like she belonged. And she did belong, except for one small problem. She wasn't in the game. Not as a secret character, not as a palette swap, not as a glitch or a hidden fight triggered by some impossible flawless victory on a specific stage. She simply did not exist in any playable form. You could see her, you could not play her, and nobody could explain why. Players called her Scarlet. Dedicated fans started preserving every scrap of evidence they could find. Magazine scans, promotional screenshots, grainy arcade footage. They compiled it all and presented it to the world like lawyers building a case. She's real. We have proof. Look at the photos. And they were right. The visual evidence was undeniable, but the gameplay evidence was zero. She existed in photographs the way a ghost exists in a haunted house story. Everybody's seen her. Nobody can touch her. This went on for years. not months, years. Scarlet became one of gaming's longest-running character mysteries, a fighter trapped between confirmed and mythological, real enough to see, impossible to play. Then, NetherRealm did something extraordinary. They made her real. In Mortal Kombat 9, Scarlet became a fully realized playable character with blood-based mechanics, a complete moveset, and genuine narrative significance. The community hadn't just been right about her existence. They had literally willed her into the game. Decades of forum posts and collective demand turned a promotional ghost into a canonical icon, and that's what makes Mortal Kombat Easter eggs special. From Toasty's random face popping into the corner of your screen, to Reptile's impossible hidden battle, to Ermac being born from a typo, to Rain existing as a mirage, all the way to Scarlet spending a decade as a photograph before becoming a person. This franchise doesn't just hide secrets, it lets its community finish building them. The players see something that shouldn't be there, they refuse to let it go, and eventually, it becomes real. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.